What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Yala, your thrice weekly podcast where we talk about the hottest news with a touch of what, Terrence?
Good old humor.
Good old humor,
Yep.
man.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess this is the first full week that everyone is back to either work or school or 2023 as it is lah.
Yeah,
Right.
how do you feel about that? Basically this past week I had to take down Christmas tree, take down Christmas lights,
Yeah.
stop playing festive music around the house.
Yeah.
Start planning about 2023 for real and all that. But
Yeah.
how do you feel about all that?
I mean, similar lah. It almost feels like the stuff that I was supposed to feel like the eating junk food, eating snacks and all. Last week was like the buffer zone where I was like still okay lah, just eat whatever I want. Whereas this week feels like okay, it's time to get down to business, man.
You mean like for health wise or exercise?
I mean
and
everything lah, like what you said. Even like okay, like getting back to the stuff that is not so much the festive holiday period is like even for us, what are the plans for Yalabat this year, for Folklory, for Ministry of Funny. Yeah, like we need to get back into that sort of like programming lah.
Yeah, and I think the fact that the World Cup happened in December also, I think it added to that. It added to the crazy fuck everything else, fuck work and everything. Right? It added to that because you're like your timeline, you're up at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever to watch matches and all, and now like there's less of that going on, especially right now. So it's like even football matches, I'm like in fact even watching football matches, I'm like they don't have the same gravity or weight as the World Cup lah, right? So I'm like,
exactly.
Do I want to bother to wake up and watch that? I don't,
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I just stop, and I'm guessing this is something that everyone is feeling to a certain extent. Like the December period. I mean, my December was surreal also because of the wedding, right? It just felt like, what just happened? And even last week, I still felt the drag of the holiday season. And I say drag not in a bad
drag
way.
lah. Well,
Yeah,
such
yeah.
a Grinch, eh? Like holiday season is a drag.
Not the
Can
drag.
you say like the lingering, the lingering high or something?
I was gonna correct myself. It's more like the intoxication, the festive intoxication last week lah.
Yeah.
And I think maybe because last week also it started on a Tuesday, right? So this is the first Monday of 2023. The first the first proper Monday lah.
Yeah, exactly.
The Monday blues, man.
Yeah. So I mean maybe this week is the first week of the year, right?
Yeah, correct.
Like last year, just the hangover last year was just from last week was just too long already, lah.
Like I just found out that for Orthodox Christians, which forms a large proportion of the Christians in Eastern Europe, like this past weekend was the Christmas that they celebrate, not 25th December. Yeah, and apparently it was a split in the Catholic Church in like the 1500s, where the current calendar was adopted for one segment, while the Orthodox Christians said no, we're still going to celebrate it the way we've been celebrating since the dawn of like Christmas lah.
You heard this in church or something? Were you in church or something that you heard this?
No, because I mean it was in the context of Ukraine and Russia having the ceasefire this past weekend to celebrate the Orthodox Christmas, but then like I think there's just some skepticism there lah. Like then there's talk of Russia using the break to regroup and the Ukrainians not letting their guard down. But I mean, aside from all the horror of war and politics, I just found that I was like, hey, what is this Orthodox Christmas? Then yeah. So
fun facts.
Fun fact.
But so that's why I was going to refer to that also lah. Yeah, I think in Ukraine the so-called Christmas is more in January than in December lah, right?
Yeah,
for them,
which just feels like a very different kind of Christmas lah. But I guess there it's still winter, right? It's still and it's probably like if you grew up with that, then that's your Christmas lah.
Yeah. But in Singapore, I mean, we have the Chinese New Year festivities coming up, which also throws a spanner into the whole January is the time
getting
when
back to the grind.
Yeah, getting back to the grind and all that. Because I think for a lot of people, there's going to be a lot of snacking, a lot of house visits and things like that coming up as well, right? Yeah.
And I mean, okay, like I'm not saying this is a blanket thing, but some CNY decorations went up near my house at the hawker center, and holy mama, it is like in your face, man. Is in your
face.
What
way? In what way in your face?
It's damn bright.
Oh, it's they add lights,
but the lights are also just like they're every time you go past in a bus or like a taxi, they're like, yo, look at us. You know, and like the hawker center normally at night is like a bit more calm, a bit more serene lah. But now it feels like Las Vegas like that, man.
Yeah, I think now they're a bit smarter about the Christmas and Chinese New Year decorations in recent years, where they actually reuse a lot of stuff from Christmas, so you're not tearing everything down and having to set it up again. And in that sense, maybe they managed to combine two budgets like Christmas and Chinese New Year decorations together. That's why it feels like the Chinese New Year one is so in your face and so huge, right?
Then can combine Deepavali also. So just
why don't you
like
write into
October,
you
November,
should write in. You should
December.
write to your town council and suggest that.
No, then you cannot leave out Hari Raya, right?
Exactly, yeah. Then it spreads out over 4 months. Then it loses its meaning already, right? It doesn't feel that festive anymore. It's just there all year round.
There's just the festive half of Singapore and the non-festive half.
Yeah, exactly.
But oh well, cool. Shall we
Back
jump into
grind.
it?
Back to the stories. Oh yeah, but before that, we do not want to plug something, right, Harish?
Yes. That is, if you've been listening to this podcast, be it your first or 300th episode, and if you generally do enjoy it, it'd be great if you could just leave a rating on Spotify, on Apple, wherever you listen to this podcast, if there is a rating, because it does help build the community and the appeal to listen to our podcast. And I think for discoverability also,
Yeah, side note, I was just doing some like data backups and cleanups over the weekend. And guess how large all the files are for Yalla But our podcast have been since
in the audio
episode
files.
1. Yeah, everything. Guess how much data we have?
500 gigabytes.
It's 4 terabytes, man. 4 terabytes. 4 terabytes of audio captured since episode 1 of Yalla But till now.
Yeah.
I mean, now we've sort of moved to the cloud. We've moved our operations a little bit more to the cloud, but we still have backups of things and everything, and it's 4 terabytes too. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how much data we're creating, man.
If someone steals that, right, they can literally, I'm sure they can build an AI engine of like Harish and Terence and carry on the Yalla But podcast without even us doing the Yalla But podcast.
I don't think they need to steal it. They just need to go on Spotify and listen.
That's
and
true.
Just listen to us, right?
Just listen to us. That is true.
Yeah.
But 4 terabytes, wow. That's cool. 4 terabytes. Yep. Sweet.
That's right. All right, jumping to our first topic.
Into our first topic.
Yes.
And quite a poetic coming off the festive period where people were just stuffing their face.
Correct.
There is this article that came out in the Straits Times titled "Over half of teens in Singapore do not hit physical activity targets," and that's based on a study that was released, which we will get into.
Yeah.
But when you saw that title, Terence, what made you want to talk about it?
Yeah, exactly like you said. It's that time of the year, the start of the the research bears itself out that whenever you have a fresh start or you perceive a fresh start in your life, it's easier for you to make changes, right? So that's why New Year resolutions are such a big thing, even though I think the statistics are like 80% of people fail with the New Year resolutions, like exercise and all that, right? So it's a good time to sort of look at besides your own willpower, is there something else holding you back and holding our children back from exercising more, such as infrastructure or education or what? That's why I thought this might be an interesting topic for this time of the year as people start to, sign up for gym memberships, yoga classes, whatever floats their boat in terms of exercise. But think about like the larger scheme of things. Where does Singapore rank in terms of physical activity?
But this is focused specifically on individuals up to 18 years of age.
Correct. But it starts there, right? It starts there. Don't you feel that a lot of the habits that you have today in terms of physical activity stemmed from where you started as a adolescent, as a teenager?
Yeah, as a teenager, yes, but before that, not so much lah. Like in
Okay, okay.
the primary school and all that.
Mm,
So that's why I'm also curious to hear your take, given that you are a parent. And okay, so just some context, right? The report was released by the Swee Hock School of Public Health at NUS, and it was a research that basically used like 10 indicators,
Yep.
and it was the study was conducted in using data from Singapore, but also 56 other countries. And the data was from all the national surveys and large scale studies, all looking for those same 10 indicators.
Yep.
And it's also important to note that the data was from July 2010 to July 2020. So just as the pandemic was about to take flight.
You mean for the last couple of years of the
Yeah.
data lah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Because at first I was thinking, wow, if you use the pandemic data, it's going to skew everything, man. But they did it right before the pandemic really, like, I guess at the start of the lockdown.
Yeah.
So essentially, like for the overall score of physical activity for people up to 18 years of age, Singapore scored a C minus.
Ouch.
C minus.
Minus. Yeah.
C, not just a C minus. In a country where the academics, even though there seems to be less emphasis on academics now, to do C minus. And basically, C minus in the context of meeting the global recommendation of at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise per day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was overall, but there are other stats across the other indicators, which would you like to give a peek how we scored?
I mean, we there were certain good scores and there were bad scores. That's why I average of C minus. For example, we got an A plus for how well our community and environment supported physical activity, which I think we will discuss a little bit more of. And B for how the government promoted and implemented such opportunities. But for other aspects like family support and sedentary behavior, we got B's and C's lah. So it's not great. The interesting thing is that you can actually look up. I think that's something that you found, right, Harish? A report card, a short form report card that sort of puts everything in the form of infographics, and that's where you can really see where we scored like really bad grades for lah. Like I think sedentary behavior, for example, refers to spending less than 2 hours of recreational screen time. I'm guessing per day lah, right? And Singapore scores a C minus, which means that we spend our 8-year-old children spend a lot of time on their screens. And in terms of family and peers, we also score C minus in terms of encouraging 8-year-old kids to play outside when the weather is suitable. So it's not, these aren't good grades and they're not things to shout about. But at the same time, we have scored better on average, right, than a lot of other countries, right?
I think so. So like which countries?
I think they said that the global average, if I'm not wrong, the global average was
a D plus. A D plus.
Yeah, a D plus for the other 50s, for all 57 countries, right?
Yeah.
57 countries in the study received an average of D plus. So the ones that are at the top, they're not A, they don't get A's either. The Finland and Japan emerge at the top with an average grade of B minus.
Yeah.
So it's not all. No, I mean this one's the curve doesn't really work that way here.
It's a tough class. It's a tough class.
It's a very hard class. The highest is B minus. Yeah.
It's not exactly based on a curve. So how the grades were assigned is that if you get an A, essentially it's the country is succeeding with a large majority of children. So anything upwards of 80%. So a B is anything between 60 to 79%. C is anything between like 40 to 59%.
Yeah.
So if you're C minus, it just means about half about half.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's why there's no A plus There's no A plus overall.
Yeah.
So So like, but okay. So I asked you, this one when I saw the
Mm,
title, I was like,
mm,
of course lah. Like I think that's a global thing, right? Of course, kids, adults these days are probably not getting enough physical activity targets lah. So
mm,
why this was not something that was like, oh my god, really? Or was it
mm,
for
mm.
you?
I think, I mean, it's not a huge surprise, but
Mm,
I think it's interesting to talk about the differences between countries, lah. Because I think the fact that Finland and Japan are at the top, it kind of tells you maybe it is something about encouraging our children and kids to get out more, or maybe it's something in the infrastructure that doesn't encourage children and kids to get out as much. Lah. Fundamentally, you can think about one thing that's different between Finland, Japan, and Singapore, lah, right?
mm,
It's the weather, right? I think we have a
mm.
very different climate from Finland or Japan. And I was in Japan just recently, and yeah, it's true lah that um when it's cold outside versus when it's blazing hot outside, it's a very different experience lah of wanting to go out and take a walk and all that, right? So
Yeah.
does it surprise you that countries with like winter and cold climates like Finland, for example, or even Japan in the winter and all, does it surprise you that their kids are a little better than us in terms of getting out there and playing?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise lah. But I'm just looking at the scorecards for the other countries,
Mm.
right? So
Yep.
just looking like okay. So overall scores, Bangladesh got a C minus.
Mm.
Uh, China got a C. Hong
Mm.
Kong got a D minus. India got a C. Israel got a D minus. Japan got a B minus.
Yeah.
Lebanon. So these are primarily Asian countries lah.
Mm.
Um, and certain countries got a F, but I think it's because there's not enough data.
Okay.
So Korea got a D minus.
Mm.
Korea got a D
Mm.
minus.
Mm.
Thailand got a D. UAE F. So yeah, so amongst the ones that had conclusive, Singapore, if you think about it, compared to Malaysia, D minus, Malaysia C minus, Singapore. So Singapore probably like the weather seems to play could be a factor, and in that context, Singapore still did okay lah.
Yeah.
Um,
How about the
but
infrastructure though? Do you think Singapore's infrastructure has a part to play in terms of encouraging people to spend more time outdoors?
I think so because I think there's so many factors, and it just so happened like over the weekend also I went to a friend's place where there were kids there, and me and
Mm.
my friends who are all around my age. Some have kids, some don't have kids. We were just talking about what it's like to grow up as a kid now versus back then, lah.
Mm. Mm.
And I think the infrastructure right now, first of all, we don't have like that many open spaces to play.
Yeah.
Right? I would imagine, of course, you got playgrounds and all that, but I would imagine if you're in a place where there's greenery, more parks, more this, which is why I was surprised about Japan.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and that's where I think Singapore has the infrastructure, but it's almost like it's a bit too structured.
Mm.
But like as a parent, right? What
Yeah.
do you feel? Like I'm sure your thoughts going from no kid to having a kid has evolved
Mm.
also lah, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think like one stark difference between say Japan and Singapore is yes, Singapore has a lot of spaces around that, right?
Mm,
But more often than not, they're quite crowded lah. And these are places like, let's say you go to the Marina Barrage where there's a big grass patch where you can fly kites and or water fountains to play with your kids and all that. You go there on a weekend, it's always packed with people, lah, right? And yep, it's packed with people. Parking's an issue. Whereas like when I was in Japan, right, like there were literal afternoons where we would just okay, there's this pretty interesting outdoor playground in the suburbs of Tokyo that we would just take a train to and just go and check out this interesting old playground that has been there for I don't know 20-30 years, and most of the time there's only a few kids playing on it at a time lah, you know.
mm,
So it actually is a very pleasant thing for the parent to go and and just chill out there and watch the child and all that. So it just becomes a much more like chill experience going outdoors with your child. Whereas I always feel in Singapore there's always like you always have to deal with the crowds, right? Wherever you're going, whether it's indoor playgrounds, outdoor playgrounds, or even just places of interest. And because of that consideration, a lot of times, sometimes we're like, do we want to go and fight the crowds or fight with finding parking or that? And that actually discourages you from going out more, lah.
Yeah. So
do you ever feel that? Do you ever feel that when thinking about things to do in Singapore?
Oh yeah, of course. Like nowadays, when it goes to a crowded area, I'm like, oh my god. I think that day that we went for like a long walk at night and we ended up at MBS lah. And it was, a long walk, like sometimes it's very calming, very cathartic and all. Then the moment we entered MBS, right, I was like, oh my god. And it's just a very stark difference, like, especially when you get older and all. But I think one thing that came up when I was talking to my friends yesterday, because one of them, his kid is 7, and he and along with another friend signed up their kids for like a soccer academy, soccer class lah, soccer training. And I was just remembering, like, when I was younger, the only time we played soccer was under the void decks lah, and back then without that much technology, if after school, I don't think I had a computer until late secondary. You kind of needed to just hang out with your friends lah in primary school, right?
Yeah.
And then you want to play soccer, you got no feel and all, you just play in the void deck lah. Then you kick. Then back then the lights in void decks had no cages around them. So if you kick a ball, you kick to the glass, it falls, then you get a good workout sprinting away. If someone calls the police, then the police come also, you sprint. So it felt a lot more, how you say, like a unstructured, which was good lah. But now I can totally understand why my friends would do that, because both working parents, and ultimately it sounds like a good thing, but I don't know, it just feels so different lah. Like like as a kid growing up these days, and with just this emphasis on structure for kids lah.
But
And
isn't that
what?
progress? Like, isn't that progress? Because what you're saying about a kid going to a football academy versus playing in the void deck and all that.
Yeah.
Isn't that progress? Like I was talking to a friend recently who he was the captain of our school soccer team back in the day lah. And he said that he even he visited his kids' footballing academy class or whatever, and he was just shocked by the level of instruction going on there. Talking about tactics, talking about spacing, talking about spatial awareness when you're on the field or when you don't have the ball. Whereas back in his day, training was just basically, oh, here's a ball. This is how this is how you do a certain trick. Okay, everybody try. Okay, can already. Then next thing, okay, now play 5-a-side or 11-a-side, whatever. And that was football training for them. But now for his kids, it's like literal. They're thinking about formations and where to position yourself and how to react and attack, defense, and how to work your skills. So to me, it's like that's a good thing. I don't see it as a bad thing that there's a little bit more structure to it. But the way you're talking about it was like a bad thing like that. Why?
No, because okay, so I just have something that I do want to ask more people the more I meet them, and now I'll ask you also. Like, when you were young, right? The things that you were kind of exposed to or like made to do, or kind of forced to do, and I say young, like primary school age, like I think once you're a teenage, it's different. Primary school, did you end up liking it or disliking it? Because like even my wife, she went for piano class, piano lessons and swimming lessons, and when I asked her, and I think generally lah, it's almost like, okay, I was forced to do this, I had to do it, and more often than not, I would say it's a I'm putting it out there. More often than not, people who went through classes when they were young, right, ended up not liking what they were forced to do. And that's where I feel like part of the magic. Yeah, soccer. I know the person you're talking about because I played soccer with him also, and he was famous for taking goal kicks by tonjoling the ball lah. So
what was tonjoling?
It's like, there's a proper kicking technique where you use the instep and it looks very poetic. but he would just tonjol and use his toes lah.
Oh yeah.
But it will go fucking far.
Very far, yeah. He's got very strong hips, yeah.
Yeah, but if you look at the kicking technique of everyone on my team also, right? No one had a proper kicking technique, no. You just figure it out.
Yeah.
So, but there was a certain, I don't know, maybe I'm being too naive about it, but it almost feels like there was room to play and experiment as opposed to having that much structure. I mean, I didn't, thankfully, looking back, I didn't have anything forced on me like pianos or something. I think my parents were like, okay, you have one toy, you just play with it. And I was like, okay, I'll just play with it and it's fine. So that's my hypothesis.
But again, you're coming from that perspective of like, hindsight and like, it turned out okay and all that. Whereas maybe the problem was not that the kids were being forced to do something. The problem was the instruction methods were just not great back then. They didn't think about how to motivate a child towards enjoying the piano more. They didn't think about motivating or how to sustain the interest of the child and all that, which I think today, just hearing, I mean, I haven't got to that stage yet when I'm thinking about piano classes for kids, but even just the very basic, like, for example, Chinese enrichment classes I've been to, I've sat through a couple of them with my kid when he was much younger and all. It's super engaging. Like even for the adults and all, it's like pretty interesting because there's, a lot of song and dance and performance and all that. And I'm just comparing it to the kind of, tuition classes that I used to get as a kid for Chinese, where it's just an old lady coming to your house and like, sitting down with you and just reading to you poems all day, Chinese poems all day. Very different experience, from what it is today. And yeah, again, is the instruction, is there different methods of instruction that have now gotten to a point where they think a lot about how to sustain your interest.
Yeah. So I guess, maybe it is a method of instruction. And of course, even as an adult, if you have things forced down on you, forced down your throat, chances are you will not like it, right? Then maybe it becomes a thing of how do you expose your kids to these kind of things? And like as opposed to signing up for a 2-year course or something. And of course, I'm saying this as a newly married man with no kids. So anyone listening and thinking, you shut the fuck up, okay? You have no idea what it's like to deal with a kid in this day and age where there's an overload of info. Classes are saving our lives. I was like, okay, I don't know yet. I can imagine it to be, but maybe it's the way that the things are enforced.
Yeah. But I mean, one thing, for example, that I would point out that is very different back then and now, and I'm not 100% sure if it's better. For example, our playgrounds, right? Our playgrounds back in the day. Remember our playgrounds in the States and all that they were all sand playgrounds. Right?
Yeah.
It was all sand.
Exactly, sand. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, interesting structures that you could climb and jump off and things like that. Whereas now, you walk out to most playgrounds, it's like, the synthetic rubber flooring and there's no like there's no sense of like, and I feel that taking away that flooring and all that has removed that sense of playing with sand in a sandbox kind of feel, where you could build sand castles and just do random things, dig for ants or whatever it is in the playgrounds, right? So the playground becomes a much less it's like very functional. You just look at what's the structure that's there. If it's interesting, you spend more time with it. If it's not interesting, you fine, you just walk away. So I feel like playgrounds these days have less to offer to our children than before. I don't know, is that something you feel when you see the playgrounds as well?
I totally feel that, but I can totally imagine you as a parent, like if your kid twists his ankle in the sand, you'll be like, why you have to go to the place with the sand? Why couldn't you go to the one without the sand?
And on the contrary, but you might be less likely to twist your ankle when you're on sand and all, right?
I mean, twist ankle is one thing. The thing is, then it becomes a trade-off. Because I remember once in MacRitchie, there's the long 11-kilometer path, right? A few years ago, because at one point I was staying near there and I used to frequent the route. Then when I went back a few years later, there was this one part which I actually really liked. It was like kind of like rocks sticking out, and it was a bit of a challenge, if you want to run through it. The next time I went back, it was all like just gravel, no? You know, that kind of like small gravel. And it just made it seem like, in the middle of the forested area, why you got this trail of gravel? But I think it's because a lot of people got injured there.
I see. But it's much less enticing to walk on that, right?
Yeah, because it feels okay. Like the beauty of MacRitchie or those nature reserves is that you feel like you're in nature. Then suddenly you got this thing that's there, but then it becomes the whole debate, like what you said. But it's progress. What you get less people injured. It makes it more accessible. Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good thing?
But that's right. Yeah. So my question is whether like even all these synthetic rubber floorings are necessarily do they necessarily really get people less injured? Because a lot of times, you've seen the flooring it degrades to a point where there's potholes and things like that, and it's still the terrain is still all over the place. Whereas sand, you kind of like it's kind of an organic feel, and if you watch a toddler or infant just on sand, they sort of understand how it works pretty quickly lah. It seems like you don't need to teach them how to walk on sand. They sort of just get a feel because their feet can really feel and understand the ground properly lah. So even down to like I think there's a related to our second topic also lah. There was this big debate going on about our football players playing their matches on artificial turfs versus natural grass, and ending up getting a lot of injuries, So even not even for adults, you look for kids also. It's I think it's the same problem, and then it makes playgrounds much less enticing for children, to hang out at, to just spend time exploring. I think I spent so much time back in the playground, just like collecting random cups of like sand and I don't know doing what with them but building all sorts of different structures with it But now there's none of that at all the modern playgrounds.
Yeah, exactly, and it ruins a bit of that kind of like the sandbox is really like that it's there's so much mystery and uncertainty, and of course I can imagine if your kid plays in the sand, they come back home, they bring sand home right?
Yeah. So but that's life, right? That's life. That's what that's what life is. You can't like hide from sand forever. We're an island after all.
I agree, but then I don't know, man. Like last week, Sim Wong Hu, the founder of Creative, passed away. And just reading up about him, he was a total badass trailblazer. But he also wrote this book called Nuts. Do you hear about that? It stands for No U-turn syndrome. And it's a term that apparently he coined, which talked about how Singapore, even at his time, or even more so at his time, was structurally not the best at encouraging people to push the boundaries. An example he gave was that in Singapore, you can only U-turn where there's a sign that says you can U-turn. Right? So all other turnings you cannot U-turn. But in other countries, I think he referred to Europe at that point in time. I don't know how it is now, but in countries like that, you can U-turn anywhere except where there is a no U-turn sign.
Yeah.
So in one way, it's like, okay, you can U-turn wherever, but if you see this, don't. Apart from that, it's all good. But Singapore is a flip, and it just struck me as like, hey, actually that's an interesting way to look at it. Look at the structural difference, lah.
Yeah, it's true.
But then,
I mean, it's something that I think also struck me when we were studying the US as well, right? When the roads were, I mean, the places I lived in the cities like Philadelphia and New York, the roads were really just like square grids, right? And a lot of times, oh shit, I missed a turn. You just turn at the next turning, and you turn around, then you come back to where you needed to go, right? Basically, it's like you do a small loop. Whereas in Singapore, it's like, oh, you miss this turn, okay, go 600 meters ahead, find the U-turn, then you U-turn, you fight through the traffic there, the U-turn back, and then slowly come back to your place. But oh shit, there's a little thing you can't just U-turn and come back at that. Cannot. So I've encountered that quite a few times in when I remember when I first came back to Singapore and was going around and all that, and I always felt, is it just that we're too is it me being too spoiled by having the right to just turn everywhere, or is it that in Singapore everything's so structured that you really just can't deviate from the path, right?
It's like jaywalking also, right? I think we spoke about it. Do you jaywalk? I jaywalk like crazy, man.
Yeah.
Like almost like traffic lights, okay, they help, but don't need all traffic light always. But I've met some people who say they don't jaywalk.
Wow. Okay. Depends. I guess depends on how confident they are that if something happens, they can run fast enough.
But like even if the road is clear, no.
Oh, okay. Then that's strange. Unless, I mean, just make sure there's nothing wrong, no police or what, right?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, there's this fear. But interestingly enough, the same report, right? The only thing that we got A plus for is the community and environment, lah. And because almost 97% and above of parents who have like kids 5.5 to 8 years old said that the presence of open areas, parks, playgrounds, swimming pool, gyms, sports activity clubs all encourage the children's physical activity. So everything you were saying about the sand just now, right, is all doesn't count, dude. People feel that, I mean, based on research like this.
Yeah, but it's just a statistic that there are these open areas and parks and playgrounds, but whether they're good or really encourage you to use them, that's another question, right?
Dude, this A plus, right, it's going to be printed and framed in every office in the civil service in Singapore. It's like, we got an A plus. We got an A plus for this.
Okay. The URA, it's going to come with like, a little gold frame and everything.
A gold frame. So I mean, that's why it's interesting. We'll put a link to all the reports because the Straits Times articles, like they always do. Maybe there's something we don't understand about why they cannot just link to the report. Had to
just to keep you on their side, lah. Keep you on their side.
Right? Yeah, you just had to Google so much to find the damn reports. And the reports, there's the scientific report, but there's also these more readable, long and short forms, and they're available at the NUS website. Yeah. Some have to dig there. So we'll put a link to all of that. If you've got a minute, it would be interesting to see.
Correct, yeah. But then, since we're talking about the priority of, sporting or outdoor activity vis-a-vis other kinds of activities, right? That actually brings us to the second topic, which is precisely that kind of discussion that has blown out into the open north of Singapore in Malaysia. And what is this big discussion?
It is the discussion that an upcoming Jay Chou concert that's going to be held in Malaysia, and all the requirements it has of the stadium to be set up a certain way, with the stage set up a certain way, will mean that 21,000 seats will be unusable for an upcoming football game between Malaysia and Thailand. So it is, and it's not just a friendly, it's an ASEAN Football Federation Cup match. So the fans are all saying, "Yo, man, we want to watch football. We don't want this concert. This is a game of national interest. No, why are 21,000 seats being made unusable? Closed off.
Yeah. To be exact, I think what is happening is that Malaysia is in the semi-finals of the AFF Cup, and they are playing Thailand. There's the semi-finals play across two legs, and they've already won the first leg 1-0. So they have a very good chance of making it to the final. Then they will play at that stadium as well, right? But because there is a concert this coming Sunday on the 15th for Jay Chou's concert, they've already started to set up the infrastructure for the concert. That means building a stage on one end of the stadium, which has closed off 21,000 seats already for the build up to the concert, right? And therefore, that means the second leg of this semi-final, which is being played, I believe, on Tuesday night, the 10th January, Tuesday night. The second leg of this final they'll have 21,000 less seats for the audience. So there's a fear that and there's a good chance that Malaysia wins and goes to the final, that they still will not have these 21,000 seats available, because even after the concert, they'll take time to tear everything down, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't possibly tear it down overnight, which is, I think the final happens on 16th January, which is next Monday night. So there won't be enough time to tear down everything after the concert. So people are kind of pissed off now with Jay Chou, even though he's just here to sing and have a concert.
I mean, he did post on Insta stories that he's fine pushing back the concert. And for context, the concert was actually planned for like before COVID, but because of COVID, it got delayed by 3 years lah.
Yeah.
So, wow, this one you read also. I mean, okay, if this was happening in Singapore and Singapore was in a similar position as Malaysia, what would your reaction be?
I think it kind of already happened to some extent. In the sense that this same tournament, the AFF Cup, right?
Yeah.
The group Singapore played in the group stages.
Correct, with Malaysia.
And the National Stadium was not available to National Stadium. Singapore Sports Hub was not available for the matches because they weren't able to prepare in time after Jay Chou's concert, which also was quite recent, right? Yeah. So they ended up playing those group matches in the Jalan Besar Stadium, which, to my earlier point, people complained about, like, I think the coaches of the opposing teams complained about, because it's an artificial pitch. So artificial pitches, anecdotally, artificial pitches can cause a lot of injuries for very high intensity professional players, right? Which is precisely what happened to two of our national players in friendlies that they played. I think they played a friendly with Maldives recently on the artificial pitch and got injured. And then they were not available for AFF Cup. So all in all, Singapore has been affected by this thing, and now, congrats to Malaysia. They're in the semi-finals and they might go to the finals. So they're now facing this issue, and Jay Chou again is in the middle of all this. So that's why it's pretty interesting, because it's not just Malaysia, but Singapore has been affected. But yeah, to your point, I think Singapore, we just we didn't bat an eyelid because we're like, okay football, whatever.
That's sad, yeah. Like, I mean, whatever you just said reveals so much that in Singapore, I didn't even know about it. And I'm someone who tries to read the news every day. Stay on top of things. I didn't know about it. And at first, with this whole Malaysia-Thailand thing, I actually felt like, Jay Chou, poor thing, like this thing happened. But the fact that it happened in Singapore also, right?
Yeah.
I placed it solely on his team, man.
Yeah. And you know what the worst part is? If the concert was awesome and got rave reviews from everyone, then maybe it's forgivable, right? Because you're pleasing everyone after not having played a concert for so long, and you've got so many fans in Singapore, Malaysia. But there were so many complaints about the concert in Singapore. I don't know if you read about it in the news, but there were a lot of complaints from big Jay Chou fans about how bad the concert was. Bad because not only because of the infrastructure or sound or anything like that, because I think we've heard issues about the sports hub and the sound quality there, but because Jay Chou apparently he only sang for half of the concert or something like that. And a lot of his fans were unhappy because they paid to see Jay Chou, but he ended up listening to a lot of his celebrity friends and guests coming on stage to sing his songs instead, which annoyed a lot of people. And then there were other small complaints about the light sticks being reused from the last tour and everything like that. But those are small things. But the big thing was that they paid for Jay Chou, but they didn't really get a full Jay Chou experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I remember that whole kerfuffle there. So then maybe it's not just on his team. Like for concerts to be held in countries, I mean, I'm assuming the country authorities also need to, I don't know, like issue a permit or something like that. And if there is the ATF around the same time,
the AFF, the AFF,
isn't it the ATF? Oh, it's not
the AFF Championship.
AFF Championship.
Yeah.
It just feels like like what? It's quite the AFF. It's quite a significant event So there's always going to be the chance of the biggest stadium in the country being needed. Then for this kind of concert, walao.
Yeah.
Oh, hearing that it happened in Singapore also changed it for me, man.
Yeah, but to be fair, they're also dealing with a backlog of events, right? They've been wanting to be held but then were delayed because of the pandemic. So they are also just trying to honor the contracts and trying to make these things happen within a very compressed period, So there definitely will be some what do you call it? Compromises that have to be made either side,
True,
but I mean,
true.
but at the same time, like having just watched the World Cup and the kind of hysteria that comes about when a country qualifies or or even wins a match at the World Cup and all that. Don't you think it tells you about how how much each country values their sporting achievements and all when they prioritize a commercial concert over like a national event like like qualifying for the semi-finals or finals of a pretty big football tournament in the region, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess these sort of dates would probably have been confirmed a long time ago, right? Like what you said also just now, it's true, balancing the commercial interest. Because I'm assuming when these things happen, part of the revenue generated does go to the stadium also. I don't know how much. But if you imagine the stadium authorities also, they'll be like, okay, if we assume that the country will qualify and we reject this thing that's going to bring in a lot of revenue that could be used for the stadium, that's one approach. But then if the country doesn't qualify, right, then it's just an empty stadium, no?
Yeah,
it's just an empty stadium. But yeah, it's just one of those things. And also off the back of all that controversy around the organization that runs the Singapore Sports Hub.
Yeah.
Right. It just makes you think like, hey, shit, like how do they decide when and where and how to have these sort of events?
Yeah. I think in the Singapore case that we talked about, like in some ways, it's a bit difficult because we really don't have as many venues and all that, right? To alternative venues that can house as many people and all. But I'm just thinking Malaysia, probably there are probably more venues because just they have more space and more stadiums and everything. So I don't know, man. It's a tough one, lah. Because if Singapore was in the semi-finals or finals of this AFF Cup, which was highly unlikely to begin with, but it could have happened, right? I think we'd be making a lot more noise about not having seats available, right?
Yeah. I think I think so, lah. Suddenly no one gives a shit also.
Yeah.
Which is the sad state of Singapore football, lah.
It is the sad state of Singapore football, yeah.
Oh, like I don't know whether Jay Chou, every country in Asia he's been going, his concerts have just been fucking everything up.
Yeah. I mean, he's fucking everything up, but he's just raking in the money as well. Like I knew, like so many people I knew, so many people that I did not expect to go to the Jay Chou concert went for the Jay Chou concert, So I knew they were, relatively casual fans and all, but they actually paid money to go. I guess the there's this urge to go and be part of a big concert that's been building up all these years, right? Because of COVID. Yeah, so I was quite like, wow, it's such a big deal to so many people. Okay lah, fine. But the icing on the cake was that it was a lot of them ended up disappointed lah.
But going back also to what you said earlier about why having other options for stadiums, turns out the Bukit Jalil National Stadium in KL is the largest stadium in Southeast Asia and can hold 85,000 people. Yeah, because I know in Malaysia there's the Shah Alam Stadium, but I guess Bukit Jalil is the biggest lah.
Yeah.
So and just the chronology, apparently Jay Chou and his team first booked the venue 4 years ago in March 2019 before he postponed the concert. But the Football Association of Malaysia booked the stadium for the AFF 2022 in August 2022.
Yeah.
So also a bit last minute lah.
Yeah. And I think Jay Chou said, he can postpone the concert, it's not a problem, and he just wants to sing for his fans, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's...
Then I'll say, tell that to the Singapore fans. Because they wanted you to sing for them, but you didn't sing for them. You only sang 50% of the time. So tell that to your Singapore fans.
Jay Chou. No, but like the thing, that last line on the article, the Football Association of Malaysia booked the stadium for AFF. So I think maybe also like it is the easiest thing to think that the sports authorities and the stadium management are one and the same.
But they're not.
But I guess not lah. Like I don't think the Singapore Football Association also has first dibs on the national stadium or the sports hub regardless lah. I guess it's run like a business lah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's where hopefully, hopefully this is just because of the pandemic, right? There's all these clashes.
Yeah.
And hopefully we don't experience anything as disruptive as the pandemic ever again, at least not in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Then maybe we can go back to having like big Jay Chou concerts spaced out from big football tournaments. Yeah. And
Yeah,
we don't
exactly.
end up having our national players injured right before big tournaments because they play on artificial turfs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But yeah,
Cool.
enough
Yeah.
enough complaining about Jay Chou. What is your one Shiok comment of the last few days?
My one Shiok comment is uh like a long time commenter, Majestic Economist 6. This was on the subreddit thread for our last podcast, 355, where we talked about the Potong Pasir family discovering that the HDB flat they lived in,
Yeah.
there was skeletal remains found of a man who was dead for 9 years lah. That happened 2 years prior. So Majestic Economist 6 wrote that when he was a boy in primary school, called to his great grandmother's house because she had passed away, and being confused about death lah. But
Yeah.
now working as a pastor, he has taken care of so many funerals where the person passed away in their home, and he pointed out that people dying at home is a lot more common than people realize, because elderly people prefer to die at home than in a hospital lah. But also that he can understand why people might not want to purchase a house where someone died. So yeah, I guess that one line about knowing that people dying at home is a lot more common than people think. Because I think you grow up with this notion that people don't die at home. You know, a home is where you grow, but when you grow old and die, it doesn't happen at home. But it's true, it does happen a lot.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
I think it's a more
sobering
common
comment.
It's more common phenomenon than we think.
Yeah. But what about you, man?
Actually, let's take a step away from our Reddit and go to the cesspool that is TikTok comment section. Because I mean, if you don't already know, we do have a TikTok account where Tristan, our man, our guy on the ground, has been posting a lot of little snippets from our podcast and just I think there have been a few that have gone like quite a number of views and comments, and usually they're about Singapore issues like GST, cost of living in Singapore versus Taiwan, for example, in the episode we did with Andy Chen. But just recently we posted one that was the title was Giga Chat Zelensky. So I think we talked about how Zelensky has been fronting the PR for the war between Ukraine and Russia, right? I mean, he's gone to the US, he's made a speech at Congress and then made the news and all that. But the surprising thing is all the comments that just from that little snippet that we put up were all anti-Ukraine. Very strangely anti-Ukraine, and from very random accounts, user 96966661511555517. But they're not like just throwaway comments, they're like comments that talk about NATO and NATO's history in the region, and they liken NATO to a triad society. They talk about Zelensky as a puppet of the USA, and how he got them to a war with people fleeing and dying in thousands, but there's wayang with a green military outfit. So I'm just like pretty curious about where these comments are coming from. Like, who are these people who are so active on Twitter, on TikTok, and so feeling so strongly about the Ukraine-Russia war that they need to make all these comments, or whether they're just bots, maybe, I don't know. It's kind of crazy, Like, it's one of our more commented posts in recent times, and they're all anti-Zelensky. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So is that a challenge to those commenters to show themselves? Or just like
no need. It's just like it's just interesting to see where this barrage of very one-sided comments all coming from various people that don't seem to have had much other activity on TikTok other than just commenting on stuff related to Ukraine and Russia. Yeah.
So your Shiok comment is the introspective evaluation or maybe not so Shiok comments on our TikTok channel.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what side of the fence you're on, right? Whether it's Shiok or not. But it's just interesting. I think it's just interesting to highlight like how what's going on in the world of TikTok, because TikTok is much less. TikTok comments space is much less self-regulating than, say, Reddit, right? For example. So I'm not sure what's going on there, lah. But just interesting to see, lah. Like why our video. It's not like our video went viral or anything. Like it's not say it's got a ton of views, but it's got a ton of comments, like almost trying to shoot us down as much as possible. Yeah, it feels like a missile is directed at this video, and as it was launched into space, everybody they fired like 30 different missiles at it, lah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting, huh?
Interesting.
Interesting. Cool.
Yes. And what is your one Shiok thing?
My one Shiok thing is an article that I read by this guy called Paul Millett that is titled "My 12-Hour Walk." And basically he talks about the trying this concept of taking a 12-hour walk with no phone, no route, no plan, just go. And he adopted it from the creator of that term, I guess, the 12-hour walk, Colin O'Brady, who was an extreme athlete. I think he did a world record attempt to walk across Antarctica and all. And initially when I read the article, I was like, oh, it's quite interesting because the guy, Colin O'Brady, apparently came up with this because from his time doing extreme stuff, and any guy who went through army or anyone who maybe didn't go through army but did a marathon or a long run, you know that certain times when you push yourself, there's a certain sense of accomplishment that comes with it, But as you start your job, you have a family, you have all these other things, it's hard to get away and go do a military exercise or a route march or some extreme thing, So he coined this term like a micro adventure, which is just okay, it's something you can do in your day-to-day life, but it brings you to that place where you are physically tired, you're mentally tired, but it's a bit meditative, And I thought, hey, that's actually quite a cool concept, and I want to try it one of these days. Just go for a 12-hour walk around Singapore.
No phone and
nothing. Yeah, just go, no route, and just go where life takes me. The only thing is, when I was Googling to find links to this, I found out that it's turned into a movement, where there's a book, there's a course. He talks about it. He goes around the world talking about a 12-hour. Then I was like, okay, it's something that's commodified, admittedly. So when you Google it, don't be turned off by oh shit, there's all these things that are selling me shit. Just
Singapore.
Just try and appreciate the concept. Yeah.
Singapore, we have what? You go for reservist, that's essentially your 2 weeks, mission, what? You get away from family, they can't contact you, and then I got no phone, I can't.
The point of this 12-hour walk is you go without a route, so you just walk where you feel like. In army reservist, you can do that, is it?
You can't, but
you can't.
You can really disconnect from work and family, and no one can blame you for it, Which I was laughing earlier because to me this 12-hour walk thing sounds like the perfect excuse for. No. It sounds like the perfect excuse for a husband to be cheating on his wife or vice versa. I think I've literally met people who they love reservists because it's a chance to get away from their wife and their family, and but I'm literally meeting them at a bar, in the middle of the reservists, that kind of thing, and they are partying and dancing with people and all that. So this 12-hour thing sounds like, oh yeah, I'm going to disappear for the next 12 hours. Yeah, don't.
I'm uncontactable.
Don't look me up. Yeah, I'm contactable. Have nothing on me. Yeah, don't. Yeah, if I end up just staying over at a hotel or something, don't blame me. Also, I'll just be tired or whatever.
Hey man, anyone can do what they want with their 12-hour walk. I'm just gonna walk. I'm just gonna walk. And see and see how it goes. I just thought it was a cool concept, It's an interesting concept,
Gonna happen to walk past Geylang or something also, is it?
No, I'll walk and watch Avatar by myself at the same time.
Oh, at the same time?
No, as in I walk for 12 hours and then the Avatar thing can come either in between or something,
Oh yeah, perfect. When you watch movie also, so-called uncontactable.
Yeah. So 15 hours of uncontactability. 15 hours.
And the side issue, it's really quite difficult. In Singapore, I think a couple of days ago, I had to get my phone, the battery replaced, right? And I was literally without my phone for about 4 or 5 hours. And I really felt disconnected from daily life. I couldn't call people. I couldn't get a car. I had to queue up for a taxi.
You didn't know where to go. You didn't know where to go.
I didn't even know where to go. I had to like try and call people to try and get the address and all that, and talk to the taxi uncle and tell him where I was going. That kind of thing. So it's quite impossible to live now without your phone on you or some form of connectivity on you. That's what I realized.
All the more why you should do the 12-hour walk. It's a micro adventure, dude. Be open to micro adventures.
Correct.
Micro adventures.
That's right. Yeah, to all those people going on micro adventures away from wives and your families and all that.
Hey, husbands also. Confirm got some women go on micro adventures away from husbands, okay?
So you have a champion here helping you with your alibi.
Spread the word. Spread the word, exactly.
Yeah. I heard of this thing called micro adventure, India. You don't think it's okay for me to just disappear for 12 hours without any contact? Yeah, sure.
There's a book about it.
I heard it on this podcast. This guy on this podcast talks about it. Yeah, you should
There's
listen.
a book and there's an app. Yeah, so it must be a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your Shiok thing? Shitting on my Shiok thing so much. Yeah, what's your Shiok thing?
No, my Shiok thing is a book that I'm reading by an economist from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Her name is Katie Milkman, and her book is called How to Change. It's called, it's How to Change, getting from where you are to where you want to be. So, I chanced upon the book because I just happened to read a review about it, and then, because she's apparently very good friends with another author and professor named Angela Duckworth, whom I think did a very famous TED talk about the concept of grit, GRIT in children, right? And how grit is the most important determinant of a child's success in life and all that. So Katie Milkman, apparently she's also from the same university, a professor at the same university, and she is interested in the behavioral science of how you effect change in your life, like what I mentioned about New Year's resolutions and how to try and create habits that stick and all that. So I think because she's such good friends with Angela Duckworth, there's a lot of cross-pollination in the things that she talks about in her book with what Angela Duckworth talks about in her book about grit. So I think that there's a lot of interesting things about if you want to, not just for yourself, but let's say to encourage people in your life to change their habits or do things differently and all. There's a lot of little tips that this book tells you, backed up by scientific experiments and data and all. So for example, like the probably the biggest thing, one of the big takeaways from even just reading a part of the book is that cue-based planning, so to speak, is the best way to really get yourself to do something that you typically would shy away or procrastinate or forget to do.
Cue-based meaning like an alarm or something?
Meaning like you give yourself something that reminds you that you need to do something else. For example, like let's say you put a soft toy of a duck at your kitchen table, and the cue is that if you see the duck, it means that you need to go and put on your shoes and go exercise. So if you put that at your dining table, so every day when you go downstairs and you see that duck on the dining table, then you're reminded, okay, I need to go and exercise and do my thing now.
Why the fuck would you use if you use a duck, the thing, I feel like you should go, you feel like you want to go shower and take a bath or something.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The funny thing is that and research bears this out, that if you use very strange things as cues to get yourself to remember to do something, it's much more likely that you will do it, as opposed to as opposed to just telling yourself, I'm going to try and exercise every single day, every single morning, go for a run, that kind of thing. If you just have a little something that just sits there and just reminds you, maybe you should do this, it's much more effective in getting you to do it. So that's, for example, those are little things that she writes about in her book that are quite interesting. So another new year,
another hack for people who want to get away from with stuff from your partner. If you leave like your boxes and all in the hall or something, right? Just say it's a cue-based. Is what?
Cue-based planning. Cue-based planning. to remind yourself to dress up before you go out, right? Or something like that.
If you don't do the dishes or something that plate, you're like, oh yeah, it's cue-based planning. You know, it really makes me appreciate how there's dirt in every part of our lives and we need to embrace it.
Yeah. Yeah.
12-hour
you've
walk
heard
and cue-based planning.
Yeah, you've heard the concept of the memory palace, right? Like, you remember the concept where if you need to remember a long grocery list, for example, they encourage you to remember it not using any mnemonic devices or anything, but by imagining that you're like walking through a familiar place, like your childhood home or something like that, and placing each of those items from the grocery list in the different rooms as you walk through your home.
Yeah.
And apparently that's a much more effective way to remember lists of up to 11 or 12 items. Let's say you walk in, and then on where your shoe cabinet is, you imagine that there's a bag of rice sitting there. Okay, that's the first item you need to get, a bag of rice. Second item, you need to get green vegetables. As you walk through the living room, there's a bag of vegetables on the table of the living room. And apparently that helps you remember things a lot better. Yeah.
Oh,
it's one of those strange things. Yeah, it's one of those strange things about psychology that is always interesting. And this book has all these details about that. Yeah.
Cool, man. Awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool. Hope you guys are all having a great start to the week as well.
Yeah, great start of the real first week of the new year.
Yeah, real first week. Correct. Yeah. And we'll talk to you guys soon.